So on this channel, I talk often about the greatest supply chain crisis that our nation's facing and how it actually predates the pandemic. And of course, this is the fact that the supply of evil white racists doing the evil white racism never quite meets the desperation in demand that we're seeing in the marketplace. This is one of the reasons why on the regular, we are confronted with story after story with even more ridiculous circumstances in order to add up to that evil white racism that always seems to elude us. And a perfect example of this is the story of this supposed bike Karen trying to steal a bicycle from black young men. Wow, isn't this something that just happens in the United States of America all the time? A 6 months pregnant white woman walks up to a group of urban black youths and demands their property that they justly paid for. And the reason we're covering this today is because if you were suspicious about this story, if you were suspicious about this narrative of a 6 months pregnant white woman coming off of work and deciding that she wanted to rob a black person, then those suspicions were in fact confirmed, because the New York Post is reporting that the Citi bike that was in fact in dispute was of course paid for by the 6 month pregnant white woman, and in fact the black men that were attacking her, threatening her, swearing at her, were actually the ones trying to steal from her. It was weird how one person is crying in a situation, the others are laughing and throwing epithets at that person, and oddly, the person who was crying was actually the person that was in the right, was correct. And again, we have another one of these hoaxes. But before we get into the details of this, I just want to say thank you to everybody who signed up over on my website, actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Where you get early access to videos on the secret video page. And thank you to everyone who's listening on Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts for the podcast version of this show.
Record him.
Help me! Please help me!
It's not your bike.
Please help me!
It's not your bike.
Please help me! Help! Please get off me!
Wait, what the f*** going on, bro?
Please get off me!
Yo, don't not take him, bro.
Now you're not getting the bike, bro.
Hey, now you're not getting the bike.
Help!
You're not getting
Get
the
off
bike.
me,
I'm
dude.
not. Bro,
Why you took his phone? What's wrong with you?
stupid as something. You're not
Don't touch
touching
his
my
phone.
phone.
Do not touch his phone.
I'm not touching you. You putting your stomach on my hand.
My dude, stop. No. My dude, stop. No. I said no. I said sit down.
So as you can see by this version of this video, this is a dispute over Citi bikes. And for those of you who are unaware, Citi bikes are a thing in a lot of urban areas in New York City. I see them all the time, that you essentially sign up for the app, then you register to rent the bike, it becomes unlocked, and you use that to go wherever you want to go. I find the Citi bikes to be obnoxious. They take up parking spaces, and I hate them in every possible way, but typically the bike does not get unlocked unless the person who actually paid for it, which in this case, if you're confused because the story was reported backwards, was the pregnant white woman, comes up to it. But in this circumstance, we have a bunch of young black men that are around the area trying to steal this woman's bike, and of course, they're filming her and claiming that the bike belongs to her, and obviously she's getting upset because she's surrounded by men trying to rob her, and that is a typical normal response.
Please help me!
She's just crying.
You're not crying. I got
Stupid.
I got your video.
I'm drunk.
Wait, you pulled it out? Hey, Hassan, you pulled it out? Hassan, you pulled it out?
This is my bike. It's on my account. Please move.
All right, so why don't we reset the bike?
I'm not resetting the bike.
It's his.
Reset it, and then pull it out on your account.
You're active. Stop fake crying.
Guys,
He's fake crying. Stop fake crying.
Hey, stop touching me. I don't touch you.
Hold up.
Hey, stop touching me. Stop touching me.
Why don't you take this bike?
Stop touching me.
You're not touching I will. I can't.
Exactly. So take it. So take it.
Buddy, you're stupid ass. Stop out of here. Dumbass. Your baby gonna come out with.
Not a tear came down, miss. Not a tear came down.
Now, I just want to point out one thing that should be obvious to everybody, but of course it's not obvious in this day and age. It's not obvious in our modern society, and that is, of course, even if this woman was in the wrong, this is not worthy of national news. This is not evil white racism. Obviously, you can have a miscommunication, a mistake, two people trying to rent a bike at the same time. There's a bunch of these that are all around, so these kind of things can happen. But, of course, because she happens to be a white person, and because this was posted on the internet and shared by the race hustlers on the internet, she is deemed an evil white racist for disagreeing with the black person. So even if the story wasn't complete and utter crap, it wouldn't be evidence of evil white racism. Now, the story is crap. We have 2 receipts from the woman in question, from the date, and they're timestamped just minutes apart. The first receipt, reviewed by the Post, shows the bike being taken out before it was relocked 1 minute later. Marino says this is the bike seen in the video. The second receipt shows another bike being taken out a minute later from the same docking station, and this was the bike that she used to get home after being heckled and pressured by the group. Now, of course, this was also at the tail end of a 12-hour shift, so just remember all that talk about how healthcare workers are heroes, except when they're pregnant and need to get home. Then they're villains, because we're gonna pretend like it's a likely scenario that she would go up to a bunch of young black men to rob them for their bike. However, that doesn't stop Rayshad Ritchie, who has this video with over 400,000 views, from attacking this woman mercilessly, releasing her personal information, and demanding she get fired from her job.
Full background on this Karen. The Karenicity is unbelievable. Put up the picture. We got her name, where she works, her boss.
So I want to point out that the Chiron says Karen uses white tears to steal e-bike from black rider. And of course, it's not just the lower third, it is also the title of this video, which is Karen weaponizes white tears to hijack black man's e-bike. So of course, we have an instance where on YouTube, promoted by the algorithm, you have Rayshad Ritchie, who is using racial epithets, trying to smear a woman, trying to create, manufacture, and perpetuate negative stereotypes, and this is all fine and dandy with YouTube, no problem, fully monetized video, A-okay, first class all the way, because Rayshad Ritchie, with this platform that is able to generate 400,000 views, is actually oppressed, if you don't know, and this woman that he's targeting for political retribution based solely on the color of her skin, she's just the oppressor in the situation, because how dare she not want to have her bike stolen by a group of black people who are surrounding her, assaulting her, and threatening her.
I want to remind you of a couple of things that happened in this video. Obviously, it is telling, right? You know, she said, and I quote, "You are hurting my fetus, my unborn child." Did you all hear that part? She said that. Why did she say that?
Yeah, because she was 6 months pregnant and they're shoving her. Also, I like how he puts up this image and says, "Isn't it telling?" Yeah, it is telling, because the supposed victim, the person that Rayshad is trying to paint as the victim, is smiling and laughing as this woman is clearly in distress. So this image is in fact telling, but not in the way that you would think.
You know, she said, and I quote, "You are hurting my fetus, my unborn child." Did you all hear that part? She said that. Why did she say that?
She said it because she's pregnant and these guys were trying to rob her. So when they started making physical contact with her, she tried to invoke some level of humanity in them and say, "Hey, you're hurting my unborn child. I'm 6 months pregnant." That's why she said that. Because, you know, one of the things that people try to do when they're being victimized by criminals is try to remind them and humanize themselves of that humanity in order to, you know, mitigate the victimization. But that didn't work in this instance, just in case you were wondering why people do that, Rayshad.
Because that bolsters her argument to do what she's attempting to do, which is theft under any other circumstance. We will call this attempted theft if the black male went up to the white female who paid for her opportunity to utilize the device and he decided to grab it and try to take it. We will call that clearly attempted theft.
I'm glad you put that out there, Rayshad. I can't wait for your retraction now that the receipts from this woman's Citi bike, transactions have actually come out and shown that she did in fact attempt to rent this Citi bike. This whole altercation happened, and then a minute later, she ended up having to get another Citi bike after that one was redocked. So thank you, Rayshad, for acknowledging the fact that these guys were trying to commit theft. Also, I just want to point this out because this should be understood. If you actually have a legitimate mix-up, if you're actually thinking, oh, that's the bike that I have, but then you realize that it isn't, which again would have been the worst case scenario for this minor argument that blew up into national news, then that actually would not be attempted theft. That would be a mistake. Attempted theft requires intent, you know, like the way that these guys are intending to steal from her. So, to be clear, Rayshad, she would not be guilty of attempted theft, even if your fictitious scenario actually existed. And spoiler alert, surprise to everybody, if you ran the numbers, if you brought out the math experts, if you went to MIT and asked them to crunch this whole situation, it is way more likely that young black men are stealing a bike from a white woman than a white pregnant woman going up to a group of young black men to steal the bike from them.
So let's call it as it is. And then when the Karen in question decided to physically be combative, well, that's called battery, simple assault.
Yeah, it's called assault. Assault in the commission of a robbery. Again, Rayshad, I can't wait for your retraction on this. That, of course, is never going to come because you don't produce retractions. You just throw out this racist garbage into the world. You feed it to your audience and you say, you know what? I'm damaging the world, but I'm lining my pockets. I'm a race hustler. I'm a race hoaxer. So it's okay because I'm doing better because I'm entitled to lie because I'm a perpetual victim.
There's more. The white male who responded, I don't think he believes the woman is telling the truth. He doesn't care. He needs them. He wants them to reset so that Karen can get her way. Well, it's a new day.
So you have a guy who comes into the scenario. Now, Rayshad says, I don't think this person who works with this woman believes that she's telling the truth. But then he offers a compromise, which is reset the bike, and then you can purchase it with your card if that's actually what you're doing, and she could purchase a bike, and there's no need to argue, there's no need to be swearing at each other. You could just de-escalate this situation.
Please,
She's just crying.
You're not crying. You're not crying. I got your video.
I'm drunk.
Wait, you pulled it out? Hey, Hassan, you pulled it out? Hassan, Hassan, you pulled it out?
This is my bike. It's on my account.
Yes,
Please move.
All right, so why don't we reset the bike?
I'm not resetting the bike.
It's his. It's his.
Reset it, and then pull it out on your account.
You are active.
But Rayshad doesn't like that idea. Rayshad doesn't like a compromise, so he actually gets mad at this person trying to de-escalate the situation because in reality, what Rayshad is looking for is for the divine right to steal this bike and the ability to race grift off the situation. So anything that a white person does in this scenario, even if it's, hey, why don't we just all calm down, we'll reset the bike, it's totally fine. By the way, quite suspicious that the person who was stealing the bike, what we found out, didn't want to reset it. Not notable to Rayshad at all. He's just so overwhelmed by the commonality of pregnant white women at the end of their shift at work trying to go up to a group of young black men in order to rob them for a bike. This is the thing that Rayshad thinks is more likely. But yeah, this is what we're dealing with right now in terms of this story. And now Rayshad is going to drop this woman's name and try to push for her to be fired.
All right. Sarah Jane Comrie appears to be an employee of the New York City NYC Health Hospitals based on the embroidered health systems logo observed on her scrubs. The hospital prides itself in neonatal care, okay? Her employer put up a statement about the matter. Let me read this statement in full. So they said, and I quote, "We have recently become aware of an incident that occurred off campus over the weekend and appears to involve one of our employees. We are sorry this happened and we are reviewing the incident. NYC Health and Hospitals, Bellevue, is committed to providing the highest quality of care to all New Yorkers with dignity, cultural sensitivity, and compassion.
Now, by the way, this statement was not the extent of her employer's actions. They actually put her on administrative leave pending this investigation. So essentially, they were taking the steps to fire this woman based on the backlash that didn't even have anything to do with their job. And again, I need to remind you that the worst case scenario involved in this situation was an argument where a white woman who was pregnant dared argued with a group of belligerent black males. That's the worst case version of this, which is an argument, a bad interaction between one person who happened to be white and a bunch of people who happen to be black. And yet they put her on administrative leave for this. And yet you have Rashad releasing her name into the public. He's about to show the CEO and attack the whole birthing industry as evil white racist due to the fact that this so-called Karen didn't want her bike stolen.
Put up the CEO. His name is William Hicks. Now, Mr. Hicks, I want to say this to you directly, sir. I'm sure somebody on your staff will get this to you. We already have massive inequities as it relates to black mothers birthing children. We already have that. When employees like this are exposed and they work at a hospital that specializes in neonatal care, you can understand how we're starting to connect dots, correct, Mr. CEO? It's time to nip this in the bud, sir, and I recommend you do it quickly.
That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my entire life. There's an argument between an employee at a place that happens to do neonatal care. That argument is between her and some black people. Therefore, by the transitive properties, because Rashad Ritchie is in his basement connecting dots, this is somehow linked to the bad health outcomes comparatively that black women have while giving childbirth. Now, Rashad, let me break this down for you so you can understand it. The reason black women have worse health outcomes during the process of giving birth is because they're less likely to go to prenatal care, they're less likely to detect problems early, they're less likely to do their prenatal vitamins, more likely to be obese, and all sorts of things that have nothing to do with the hospital care that they're receiving. People need to understand that medical care is medical care. It's not this all-encompassing thing that addresses every single problem that you make by the choices in your own life. Also, this is not an income thing, this is not a resource thing. What we find time and time again is that Hispanic women and Filipino women, for whatever reason, tend to have the highest survival rate while giving birth in the United States of America. So there also could be some other elements to it, some kind of genetic elements to it that make certain groups more vulnerable to death, because obviously the evil white racist system doesn't seem like it's all that effective as a system if it's working the absolute best for Hispanic women, and I believe it might even be as specific as Mexican women and Filipino women. That just doesn't make any sense at all. That would not be a logical conclusion to leap to. But even if there were issues related to hospital care, specifically with black women, that would have nothing to do with the fact that these guys were trying to steal this woman's bike. So somehow, because they were attacking a pregnant white woman, and this white woman didn't want to be attacked and she was upset, that through the transitive properties means that they don't care for black women in this hospital, even though it has nothing to do with black women.
Mr. Mayor, what are your thoughts here?
I think these black young men, specifically the one whose credit card was used to pull this bike out of the system, was attacked by a pregnant thug. Let's just call it what it is. Had this been reversed, everybody would have been up in uproar about how these black men have no care for life or people's rights or people's property.
Look, I didn't say it. I didn't say anything. The mayor said it. The mayor said those things. He said, had this situation been reversed, then all these things would have been said about these young black men. We find out the situation is in fact reversed. We find out that, of course, she did use her credit card, so they were trying to steal from her. So the opposite of what you're reporting is happening, and those are all the things that you associated with this. I didn't make any commentary related to it, but the mayor said, because he confidently thought that this was definitely the likely outcome of this story, that this would have been true if reversed. Again, I didn't say anything. The mayor of whatever town this guy is the mayor of said it himself. I just want to put that out there, that I saw it. I saw him say it. He's the one who put it out there in the world. Don't blame me. Don't get mad at me. He said the thing.
But when it's reversed, We talk about the first white man that ran up and tried to get them to reset the bike. Did you see at the end of the video, the young white man in black ran up aggressive as I'm assuming that pit bull was in Indiana?
Oh, this other guy ran up aggressive. Yes, when people see women in distress, when normal, sane, rational people see women in distress, they run up to try to defend them. It is a good, positive, moral male instinct. And I know it might be confusing to this guy, the mayor, because he's celebrating people who were saying, oh, your baby's gonna come out the R word for mentally disabled based on her actions, and shoving her and trying to prevent her from leaving with the bike that she actually paid for. But yes, he came up, and you can try to dehumanize him by comparing him to this violent pit bull or whatever, but sometimes you need a pit bull in that situation. And I also want to point out that the guy ran up and tried to help diffuse the situation because a woman was being attacked. She was actually in the middle of being robbed, by the way, by these people. And that's why he jumped into the situation. But he didn't hit anybody. He didn't make any physical contact or anything like that.
This is what happens when white women cry help, even when they don't deserve it. The exploitation of the word help in this case is unbelievable. The fake tears on demand is unbelievable. She should be tried for endangering her fetus, her unborn fetus. She put that child in danger. Because had that young man reacted in a different way when she pushed him for something that he's already used his resources to pay for, it would have been a whole different situation. So she should be liable, not just for battery on him, but the attempted battery that she could have caused that fetus.
Yes, because the response that you're talking about is something that we see all too often, which is, of course, the sucker punch. And yes, if he would have sucker punched this woman, this 6 months pregnant woman, he should receive condemnation for that, because that would have been a heinous act. Again, I need to point this out for those of you who are not understanding what is going on. In this situation, these guys were trying to steal the bike from her, but the idea that the reverse was even a likely possibility, even plausible, is absolutely insane. Worst case scenario, as I've said time and time again, this woman would have mistakenly tried to grab the same bike as him, then they would have gotten into an argument over it, and in a normal, sane society, if it turned out that she was in the wrong, they would have moved on amicably, reset the bike, and nobody would have had any issue at all whatsoever. However, we are not in a normal, sane society, so this guy is positing the idea that she walked up 6 months pregnant after a long day at the neonatal center of work, decided that she was going to rob a group of black men of a bike that they paid for, that she had some weird knowledge that was definitely going to be activated at the time. Remember, they're all just hanging around over here. They're not picking up bikes or anything like that. She had to walk into this situation, and he thinks that's a reasonable thing that definitely happens often enough that we don't treat it with the utmost suspicion when encountered with that implausible action. Absolute insanity. Again, such immorality. You're going to justify a scenario where this guy could have theoretically decked this pregnant woman in the face, which, by the way, is far more likely of a thing that would happen rather than this woman stealing a bike from a group of young black men.
Then she should also be fired.
Yeah, you should be fired. I don't know what the hell you're the mayor of. I don't know if that's a fake title or anything like that, but there's no way that you should be in office, because obviously your threat assessment is off. Obviously your logic is off. Obviously your desire to wait for due process completely missing. You should be fired. Get the hell out of here. Pack your stuff. Somebody get him one of those boxes and get out. You're not welcome here anymore, Mr. Mayor.
Who that looks like us? What black person want this woman around their newborn child in a neonatal? Ain't no way I would feel comfortable. But like you said, the explanations become blaring when we see these people's behavior. The lack of care for black life. You are threatening a black man's life when you are a white woman screaming to help when you don't need it.
So I just want to point out that this is actually what this whole movement, this whole Karen movement, is all about. It's all about delegitimizing the victimization of white women. It's all about making you hesitate before calling for help, making you hesitate before defending yourself, because they don't want you to be able to defend yourself against the criminals within the black community. They want to elevate those criminals. That's what Black Lives Matter is about. That's what all the criminal justice reforms are about. And they want to minimize that victimization, delegitimize white women, because they have a hatred for white women.
So this woman is dangerous.
Dangerous. And here's the thing. She knows it. That is why she played that card. She understands the power of her weaponized tears.
We teach women and girls of all races their whole lives to call for help, to ask somebody for support, and what these guys are trying to incentivize is that cut-off mentality that abusers try to inflict upon women in order to limit their options. And I just want to point out, had this situation been reversed, had we been dealing with a pregnant white woman and a bunch of young white men of questionable attitudes, and she said that she paid for this bike, then obviously I would not be saying that the pregnant black woman would be a likely thief. Obviously, if somebody came up and said, hey, just reset the bike and then you can work this out amicably, I would say they should have just done that rather than shove, make the woman cry, call her names, or any of that, because I'm in this crazy mode of my life where I think that you should try to de-escalate situations like this, not blow them up into national news. But you know for a fact that had the situation been reversed, even with the same exact circumstances, Rayshad and the mayor right here would be talking about the epidemic of evil white people that are attacking black pregnant women.
Okay, we'll bring you updates as it comes. I'm looking for the hospital to make a response this week.
So once again, we have another Karen hoax. Maybe this will go the way of Christian Cooper, where he got a National Geographic show called Extraordinary Birder after his original Facebook post revealed that he was threatening to take this woman's dog, and that's why she was so upset. So these guys, you could probably expect them to get a mountain biking show from Nat Geo. Extraordinary bikers. Wow, wow, wow. So stunning, so brave. And this woman will just have to deal with the negative consequences of having her name tarnished and ruined in order to be sacrificed on the altar of racial equity and cosmic justice. It's absolutely ridiculous and absurd. Her employer is absolutely cowardly for putting her on administrative leave. You can't back your pregnant employee against a group of people who are clearly trying to steal from her. And everybody who reported this story unchallenged, shame on you. You're disgusting. You're ridiculous. You're playing into this narrative. And I hope you made a good amount of money, but I hope even more so that this woman sues you for defamation due to the nasty behavior that you portrayed on all your networks. But hey, those are just my thoughts. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the bike Karen. Till next time.